Last summer, I was one of the few people who told you to pump the brakes on the Dontayvion Wicks breakout season. Well, it's now or never.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Go back to what I said about Dontayvion Wicks last August. And I felt bad pumping the brakes on the Dontayvion Wicks hype train because I think so highly of Dontayvion Wicks as a player, and I almost said as a theoretical player, but I don't want it to seem like that's a bad thing. What's really crazy is he's still put together, if you look at some of the underlying metrics, a truly terrific season from an efficiency standpoint, getting open, and in terms of earning targets when he's on the field. It is rare. Separation score charting, it doesn't usually line up across, everyone knows Justin Jefferson gets open a lot. Fantasy points. Dontayvion Wicks, second in the NFL in separation score. Fourth in ESPN's open score. Now that is like AI charting. That is the computer picking that stuff out. And then PFF separation percentage. He got separation on 75% of his routes. That was second in the NFL. He was fourth in the entire league in targets per route run. He got a target on 30% of the routes that he ran. This is all from Datorama. They aggregated this collection of data. And the reason I wanted to pump the brakes on the breakout last year was pure target opportunity. With Christian Watson, with Romeo Doubs, with Jaden Reed, with Tucker Kraft, with Luke Musgrave, with Josh Jacobs, I just didn't think it would be feasible for him to quote unquote break out. That unless he really took a significant step forward, it was just not going to be feasible in this offense. At the moment, Luke Musgrave has not cemented himself as someone who you would expect to eat significant target share from Dontayvion Wicks. Christian Watson is going to miss a big chunk of the season, at least Halloween, probably until Thanksgiving. So that leaves Romeo Doubs as the only other boundary receiver who is going to play in any meaningful sort of way. And even last season, when Dontayvion Wicks had a drop rate that, was unfathomable, he led the team in targets. He led the team, and this is crazy, in deep targets. In targets over 20 yards, he just wasn't very good at converting them. It's not really an elite skill of his, but he can do it. He is capable. You see the routes, the ability to separate. You can make the jokes about if he ever learns to catch, all those things. He's also underrated after the catch. He has the traits that you want from a #1 X receiver. Ability to win one-on-one. The question is, can you rely on him? Now, since he's been in the league, the answer is no. And it's not just the drops, it's missed assignments, it's wrong routes, it's not being in the right place at the right time. It's inconsistent play overall, but the talent is It's rare. Truly rare. At the things that matter at the receiver position. I'm not talking just like big, tall, fast. Like he's not Jeff Janis. And that's not even shade at Jeff Janis. He was all tools. He was all sizzle, no steak. Dontayvion Wicks can do the things that receivers need to do, except catch the ball consistently. Now he's under contract for 2 more years. Romeo Doubs, last year of his deal. Christian Watson, last year of his deal. So theoretically, he has some runway here, but all indications are that the Packers are going to use an early pick on a receiver in this draft. And presumably, it's not going to be a slot receiver, which means they are bringing in direct competition for Dontayvion Wicks. And if they're using early draft capital, they're doing it on a player that they believe can come in and be, if not the focal point, a fulcrum of your offense. They're going to give that guy opportunities early on. Dontayvion Wicks is going to have to advance at some of the things that he's not been able to advance at this point in his career. Consistently catching the ball being the first and foremost, but also the missed assignments, the not quite being on the details all the time. He is too talented a player for that to continue to be the case for him. But if they bring in Emeka Egbuka, he's going to be on his details. If they bring in Jaden Higgins, he's going to be on his details. And he's going to be on Dontayvion Wicks' corner. X receiver, isolated backside, one-on-one. They're going to be calling dagger and drift and Yankee and all of their staple concepts that Dontayvion Wicks was getting lots of looks at the last 2 years. They're going to be calling those for Jaden Higgins. And Jaden Reed is still going to do all the stuff that Jaden Reed does from the slot. That's not going away. Tucker Kraft is still going to do all the stuff that Tucker Kraft is going to do. I think they're going to expand that role. That's not going away. That's why it's now or never. And I'm not talking about just like this season. I'm talking about starts in the spring, because guess what? If the Packers draft a receiver with one of their first 2 picks, it's going to be someone they're really excited about, and they're going to want to get rolling right away. They wanted to give Marshawn Lloyd touches right away. When they drafted Luke Musgrave 2 years ago, they wanted to get going with him as the focal point in the middle of their field passing attack. They will feed these guys targets. And by the way, they're reintegrating Marshawn Lloyd back into this offense. He's going to be a part of trying to be explosive for them. There are fewer mouths to feed than last year going into the year, because we know Luke Musgrave has just not taken that step that you were hoping he could take. Jaden Reed didn't quite elevate the way that you wanted him to, or at least the way that it looked like he could early on. And then Christian Watson got hurt. I've been saying that the way that this offense makes the most sense is Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Dontayvion Wicks. That has been taken as shade at Romeo Doubs. It is not. I think Romeo Doubs is a fine player, and I don't mean that in a, he's fine. I think he's a solid quality player. He starts on half the teams in the league. But he's not a game changer for you. At least right now. And we've seen Packers receivers before. Year 3, year 4. Jordy Nelson was really year 4. Devontae Adams was year 3. That's the name that gets thrown out. And that's not just us. That's Packer coaches invoking that name. They see that kind of ability in him. But it's got to be about the details. And he risks losing his spot. And I don't mean just like his spot as the outside receiver. I mean his place in the hierarchy of this offense. He is going to have to get back to reestablishing that starting in May. As soon as these guys get together for OTAs, it is going to be a fight, and he better be up for it. Now, speaking of drafting receivers, what if the Packers don't take a defensive end in the first round? What if it's a receiver? Are they leaning one way or another on what to do next? I think they are. And let's talk about it next on Locked On Packers. There's nothing like the energy of a live game. Whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA playoff matchup, finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge. But then I found Gametime. Gametime makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the game gets closer. And with all-in pricing, you see the total costs up front, no surprises at checkout. With peace of mind, you can see the seats before you buy them, no surprise fees, and a low price guarantee you can book with confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed. The Packers added a day 2 defensive tackle to their lists of top 30 visits. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State joins TJ Sanders from South Carolina. Defensive tackles, different types of players. Tyleik Williams, much more in the TJ Slayton mold, big, physical, run-stopping MFer. And I really like the tape right in that round 2 range where the Packers are picking. That's where his sweet spot of value is. And he didn't complete his testing, started running his 40. He was going to, for a defensive tackle, and this is going to seem weird, but just as a measure of athleticism, he was going to have a flying 20. So how fast is he going at 20 yards? A flying 20 in the 97th percentile for defensive tackles at 334. He's enormous and a very good athlete. And you see the upper body strength, the power that he plays with to discard blockers. And you go, and control blockers. And you go, there's pass rush upside here. The real bona fide pass rush upside with that kind of power and strength at the point of attack. So, why am I bringing this up? Why does it matter? If you look at where they're expending resources in the first round, it's receiver and it's edge. Those are the players that they've had in for top 30s. That's not everything, but we've seen the pattern over the years. We've talked about it on the show. Jason Hirschhorn just wrote about it for The Leap. Let's say they go receiver. Let's say it's Emeka Egbuka, who I think is the guy if they're going to take a receiver. It's Egbuka. And I would love it. It's a little high. 23 is a little high for me, but I like the idea of taking the swing there. I would prefer Jaden Higgins personally. That's just me. I think he's a better player. But Emeka Egbuka is a perfect fit in this offense. I think he can play the Z. I think he can play in the slot, and he can definitely play in 2 receiver sets. He will block. Yes. He's a Packers type all day. I think the athleticism showed more upside than maybe we realized. So let's say they do that. Whether, let's say it's Luther Burden. Let's say it's Teteroa McMillan. Apparently he doesn't like Tet. So T-Mac, if we're going to shorten it. There is a glut, or let's say not a glut. There's a band of defensive tackles right in that range where the Packers are picking on day 2. And there's a band of edge rushers. The band of defensive tackles, Darius Alexander, Packers type, no doubt. TJ Sanders, Packers type, no doubt. Joshua Farmer reminds me a lot of Devontae Wyatt, so maybe in that way, a Packers type. Shamar Turner and Alfred Collins. Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, Alfred Collins from Texas. Alfred Collins much more in the mold of a nose tackle, though he played a decent amount of 3-tech. I don't like Alfred Collins in the second. I would prefer him in the third, but I know that he's got a lot more fans out there in this range, so I get it. And then I mentioned Tyleik Williams, who I have personally, and by consensus is a little bit higher up on the board. That makes a lot of sense. Now, the edge rushers that they would have options for. JT Tuimoluau from Ohio State, Packers type. Jordan Birch, Packers type. Braden Swinson, Packers type. He's at 73 on the consensus board. Princely Umamielen, who I think played 250 plus, but ran at 240. Packers have a little bit of interest there. Jack Sawyer, who's got the T-Rex arms, but productive at Ohio State. I don't really see it with Jack Sawyer, and I don't see it in the second round with Jack Sawyer. The fact that we haven't seen anything. Josiah Stewart also on this list, but he's small, not really a Packers type. I'm wondering if they're telegraphing this a little bit, that if they go receiver in the first, you're doing your work on those day 2 D tackles because you think the value there is better, that the value add that you're going to get from adding a TJ Sanders or a Tyleik Williams is going to, in the aggregate, be better than these edge rushers. Maybe they just don't like these edge rushers that much. When I look at my own rankings on this, and maybe you care, maybe you don't. The Packers certainly do not. They have their own. But I see Tyleik Williams, and I have him right where the Packers are picking. I think TJ Sanders, right where the Packers are picking. Braden Swinson, to me, also right where the Packers are picking. Now, I also have James Pierce Jr. right where the Packers are picking. He's going to go much sooner than that. Nick Scorton, I have right where the Packers are picking. He's going to go much sooner than that. I also have Femi Oladejo right where the Packers are picking. That would be interesting. I think he's someone who's going to be a Packers type. They trust their West Coast scout, Sam Steele, like more than anybody. I guess he's not really a West Coast scout anymore, but he was. Shamar Turner, I have shortly thereafter, a little bit further down. He's like a late second, early third kind of guy. But really, the only edge player I think is going to be their true edge is Braden Swinson. They're just going to have more defensive tackle options there. I think JTT is more like a third round guy. I think Josiah Stewart and Jordan Birch are more like third round guys. I think Joshua Farmer is more like a third round guy. I think Alfred Collins is more like a third round guy. That's to me. I think Princely Umamielen is more like a third to fourth round guy. I kind of don't see it with him. I wanted to, but I don't. The same thing with Darius Alexander. So I would understand if I'm the Packers and I go, hey, look, we love this receiver. We got to take him, but we got to add to the pass rush. Okay. Well, at 54, it's probably going to have to be a defensive tackle. Are we okay with that? And so that's why you bring these guys in, get to know their makeup. I think someone like TJ Sanders fits for the Packers. A little, I think he's 298. So he'd be a shade light. He'd be the lightest defensive tackle they drafted since Jarrell Worthy. But generally, early, they take bigger dudes. They like the BJ Rajis, the Kenny Clarks. Tyleik Williams fits. That would be one of those, like if they do double Ohio State and they go Emeka Egbuka, Tyleik Williams, round 2, that is a home run draft. Because you're also banking on internal development. You're banking on the force multiplier effect of Tyleik Williams being able to go in there and eat 2 every play. And then that frees you up to make decisions about Kenny Clark in the future, Devontae Wyatt in the future. And it ensures more opportunities for one-on-ones for guys like Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, Bretton Cox, who you're trying to develop still. Rashawn Gary less so. He's more of a fully formed player at this point. He is what he is at this point. Lucas Van Ness, though, Bretton Cox, trying to develop those guys. It'd be nice to have a space eater who also has some pass rush juice next to them to make life easier for them. I think TJ Sanders, same sort of deal. I just think TJ Sanders would be a great fit in Green Bay. I think he would be a more complete player than the other penetrating 3 techniques that they currently have. I think he's a better run defender than what they currently have. If you're going to keep Kenny Clark at nose tackle, it is interesting to me. The one is really more of a 3 tech. Sanders is more of a 3 tech, and Tyleik is more of a nose tackle. So, okay, what does that tell us about Kenny Clark? Maybe they're happy to make that decision in a year. That makes sense too. Now, we closed yesterday's show talking about trades. for a defensive player, trades with the Giants. What about these teams at the top? It looks like the Browns, it looks like the Giants are not going to take quarterbacks at the top. But that fifth-year option, man, it is awfully intriguing. Could Green Bay be the team that trades back into the top of the second round, picks up extra day 2 capital to facilitate one of those quarterback trades? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns, does an excellent job for Cleveland.com, one of the best beat writers that we have. Has been all over the reporting at the quarterback position. She said Shedeur Sanders, not a done deal, that he's not the pick at 2. But it doesn't look that way right now. They're doing a lot of work on the other quarterbacks. Tyler Shuck, top 30 visit. Jackson Dart, top 30 visit. Not really top 30, but that's her terminology. Jalen Milroe, in for a 30 visit. And Jalen Milroe confirmed going to the draft. The NFL is closing down the number of players that are going because they don't like the drama that we like as we watch of these players in the green room sitting. The Brady Quinns, the Aaron Rodgers, the Johnny Manziels. Even if it makes for great theater, the NFL doesn't like it. They think it's a bad look for the players, for the league. They don't want, I mean, it seems weird that they wouldn't want that part of that story because like that is the Aaron Rodgers story. We are still talking about it. Like if he plays in 2025, it looks like he's going to be a Steeler. They are still going to bring up the green room all this time later. And I don't know why the NFL wouldn't like that, but that's neither here nor there. It seems like the NFL gave Milroe the feedback that like, hey, this could happen for you. And enough that he's in the inner circle. And then I was talking to our pal Patricia Traina, who does Locked On Giants, and she made this point that let's say they draft Abdul Carter at 3. It's really valuable if Russ and Jameis are going to play this year, and it seems like the Browns are probably going to go get Kirk Cousins for this year. You still need, if you're Joe Shane, for example, and Brian Daboll, you'd like to be able to sell the Maras on the idea that, hey, we've got a right now plan and we've got a long-term plan. Give us the chance to see this through. Brian Daboll coached at Alabama with Nick Saban, who brought in Jalen Milroe. When the Giants went to the playoffs last, it was with a running mobile quarterback who just managed the game on offense, didn't make mistakes, and could make big plays down the field. Malik Neighbors, you want someone who can throw a deep ball? Jalen Milroe can throw a deep ball. Tyler Shuck, big, physically talented, needs to be reined in. That's Brian Daboll with Josh Allen. You want to get back into the first round. I'm just spitballing here. You probably don't have to jump into the background or, get up to 23. But just for instance, if the Packers gave 23 and 87, so the 23rd overall pick and the 87th overall pick, it is almost point for point on the Rich Hill trade chart, which, for those of you not familiar, is basically an updated version of the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. So you assign values to every draft pick, and it's how you work out, okay, what are these trades actually worth? 23 and 87 is almost point for point, like within 3 total points. So 293 for 296. 33, which is the Browns, 67, which is the Browns, and 94. The Browns have an extra 3rd round pick. So the Packers move down 7 spots in the 3rd round to get an extra 2nd round pick and then move down 10 spots in the 1st round. I love this trade. And this goes back to the conversation we were having yesterday about receiver. If you're sitting there and Emeka Egbuka, Luther Bird, and Jaden Higgins are all on the board at 23, and I think there's a pretty good chance that happens. You trade down 10 spots, you are almost assuredly getting one of those guys. And then you make that trade, understanding if 2 come off the board, now you've got extra ammunition to move up if you want to do that. and get one of those guys. Or you sit there and you take the best pass rusher left or the best receiver left, because it doesn't have to be a receiver. The context that we had yesterday was the pass rushers that they like come off the board. They're sitting there looking at receivers. And so, they trade back and still try and get one of those receivers. Now, someone brought up the idea, like the Vikings, they don't have any picks. They would beat this offer, which, like, there's no such thing as beating. Also, if you're the Browns, the value in having one more draft spot up is greater than, I guess, whatever marginal value difference would come in the trade, unless they're just going to ask for nothing to move down, which would be weird. There was some conversations being had that, hey, it's actually going to be cheap to move up. I'm trying to remember now. Dane Brugler, I guess it was saying that he thinks there's going to be more trades than we realize because it's going to be cheap for teams to move up. That no one's going to ask for very much to move down. Yeah, we don't really care. Just shoot us a 4th round pick. And that means, hey, the Packers can move up for T-Mac, for Will Johnson if he falls into the teens. But this is one of those that makes a lot of sense. And it would get more complex for the Giants just because they have 99. They have the extra 3rd round pick. That's not quite as clean on the trade chart, but like the difference between 99 and 94, the 94th overall pick, is not that big. So they could offer a different package. Plus, they have the 65th pick instead of the 67th pick. So maybe that closes that delta. So it'd be, you get 23 and 87 again for 34, 65, and 99. Same basic premise. You add that top round pick. 65 is actually the Giants. Yeah, the top of the 3rd round pick. That's nice. Top of the 3rd round. That's you can get a nice player, probably a player that's you've got a top 50 grade on at that spot. Now, would the NFL freak out that the Packers traded? Not just, and this, it would be one of those things where, like, not just traded out to the top of the 2nd round. Now, they would start day 2, so that would be very exciting. But, I think the NFL would probably freak out a little bit. I don't know. I have not heard that there's any pressure on the Packers to not do that. But I suppose it has to be said. And I mentioned it after the Combine that I had heard at the Combine that there had been a directive for a team in another city. It was unclear if that directive came from the league or ownership, that under no circumstances are you to trade out of the 1st round. And the team kind of did want to do that. So it's just, it's something that I didn't want to take seriously, but I'm taking a little more seriously as we get closer here. We'll see. I like the idea of trading down if all of those receivers are there, sitting there at 33 and going, I'll just take Luther Burden, thank you. Or I'll just take Jaden Higgins, thank you. And it's the Jordy Nelson draft all over again. And then you get another pick in the heart of this draft, which is day 2. This is where day 2 is going to win or lose this draft for whoever ends up having the best draft class. It's going to be the team that absolutely crushes day 2. All right, back tomorrow. We got a lot of fun stuff coming for you next week. Keith Sanchez from our Locked On NFL Draft Show is going to be with us. Ross Uglum from Packer Report, who nailed the Jordan Morgan pick last year. I'm going to give him a chance to run it back and nail it again this year. Mike Renner from CBS Sports is going to be with us. Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus is going to be with us. We are blowing it absolutely out next week. We're going to have a blast. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I'm definitely going to enjoy it. So follow me on all the social medias. Follow the podcast on all the social medias. Follow the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Subscribe on YouTube. We're going to be live after every round from Green Bay. I've got to decide if I want to go from the media room, do it on I guess I could do it on my laptop. Sheesh. I didn't even think about that. Well, we'll see what we can do. I'll have to make those arrangements and figure it out so you can stay locked on Packers.